Hi, Crystal. I hope you can hear me and see. If you can, please let me know because I really have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, hi, Sue. Thanks for coming, guys. I really appreciate it. And I really hope my tech skills are up to this. It's a little bit weird because I cannot do it on my phone. You have to have at least 1,000 subscribers before you can actually stream live on your phone. So I've had to rig up my webcam to do this, which is not the best of cameras, unfortunately. But if it works and we like it, then I will go out and get a proper camera for these. So thanks for coming by. Am I loud enough? Do you hear me okay? Because it's the mic on my webcam that is picking me up. So if you can see me and hear me okay, you wouldn't believe the amount of lights I've actually got on my paper. So I think it's actually the camera that is not the best, because I'm so brilliantly lit here that I'm almost blinded by the light. Oh, hey, Darlene, thanks for coming. Okay, well, I get started because it's time. So I'm going to start all of these off with the sketches that I've done over the last couple of weeks. That way it'll give anybody time to, to get their stuff together if they're scrambling to get ready. So it's a little bit, and again, here's another thing that's a little bit weird doing it on YouTube. And again, I think it's this web camera, is that everything for me on the screen, I'm watching this obviously on my computer screen, everything is mirrored for me. So it's all like backwards. So I don't think it's backwards for you guys. I did test it and it seems to not be. So I hope it's not backwards. Anyway, so this is my sketch from last Sketchy Saturday. So going from there, I've done one a day. Most of them, again, are just little scribbles, nothing too fancy. Most of them are just like 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. So I really liked the kind of the posture of this guy. That was really what I wanted. He reminded me of an old man. So I wanted to sort of capture that posture more than anything. And these from this past week, more birds, back in my comfort zone. So just pretty quick, 10, 15 minutes. These were pretty quick. Well, 15 minutes for these. And I do need to I'm going to get a proper camera because I can't zoom in and out with this one. And so it's definitely not exactly professional, but it does in a pinch. I did these in charcoal because I played around with a charcoal pencil sometime last week, and I really enjoyed it. So I thought I'd try it in an actual sketch in my sketchbook. And this was very, very quick yesterday, just a couple of minutes. And so that brings us to today. So I'm just going to get this ready. And I'll just clamp that down. There we go. So if you're new and you haven't signed up to the newsletter, that's where you can get the reference photo. Okay, so I'll just quickly go over the materials we'll be using. Again, just a soft brush to brush away any eraser crumbs, things like that. We probably may be using some graphite powder today. So if you have something to make powder, or you can use a pounce, something like this. Gosh, I hope this is showing right. Where am I? I'm backwards, so it's hard to see where my camera is. That's just a piece of cotton wrapped around 2 cotton balls that are soaked in graphite. I use a nail file, an emery board, mostly to clean my eraser. That's kind of a good little tip. I've got some soft brushes and blending tools. My pencils, you can use a normal HB pencil. Sharp. I usually use my pencils pretty sharp, but mainly I'm going to be using an HB and possibly a B and a 4H today. Okay, so let me just bring up my reference photo because it went black on me on my tablet. My lights are so bright. It's hard to see my tablet. Okay, so we're going to be doing this little deer today. And I thought it would be kind of a good one to do because I liked his pose. And it's actually a really good one for getting some kind of like some gesture movements in, give it a little bit of life. And it's kind of also a good one for measuring, because if you take, I don't know if you've printed your picture out or if you're just looking at it on a tablet, but whatever way you're doing it, if you take your fingers or a pencil or a ruler and you just basically measure from the tip of his nose to just behind his ear, and then take that measurement and measure it down the length of his neck, down the length of his chest, down the length of his legs, and his body is around 4 and a bit head lengths. And then if you do the same thing going across from the widest point of his body, which is at his neck there, and go across the other way, it's about 3 lengths across. So that kind of gives you a good idea of where you can fit him into your page. So I'm just going to make a little mark here. Can you guys see? Gosh, this lighting looks so funny to me, but I hope it's okay. I'll try and fix my lighting for next time. I really don't know what the problem is. I'm sure it's the camera. Anyway, so this is going to be where the top of his nose is. And I'm going to make his head going back to the back of his ear, about that long. So if I then take that measurement and I do that times, so that's going to be about from the tip of my lead right down to where the silver part ends. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and just a little bit. So that's where the ground is going to be. Yes, I'm in fame. And then from the front of his body, you can mark that anywhere as long as it's, actually I'm going to put it a little bit back because if we have time and room, I want to put a little bit of a tree in there. So his neck is going to be there and his body goes about 3 of these lengths. So again, I'm just roughly, measuring 1, 2, 3, something like that. Might come out to there. Okay, and then once you've got your basic measurements of where you want to place him on the page, and this time around we do know it's a him because of those beautiful antlers, then we're looking at the shapes. And obviously that head is a very obvious triangle. So we're going to come up here where the tip of his nose is, down to where this is going to be behind his ear. First thing you want to do really is lay your pencil again on your reference photo on the angle that head is on. So measure from the tip of his nose just to the bottom of his ear. And that will give you basically your angle that you want the head in. And you might want to draw a very light center line in there. And that'll help to give you your angle. So I know my nose is going to be about here, and the head comes, the top of the triangle is at the top of his ear. So if I'm coming out, the ear will be right around here. Might be like that. And then the bottom of the triangle, well, it's not a pointed triangle. He's got a little bit of a squared off muzzle there, so we can give him a little bit of straighter line there coming sort of down on a 45-degree angle. And his little chin is under there. And then from there, that triangle comes down almost straight. So it's just off of the vertical and right down to about that same distance. And that gives us basically our form for the head. Okay. We're just going to get the shapes in first because this is a little bit of a complicated one. If I go too fast and you want me to slow down, please just say. I keep checking the chat to make sure that I'm hopefully seeing anything you're saying. So then his neck will come down. And again, if we measure the head on our picture and the neck is right down to the top of the chest. The neck is almost 2 lengths of the head. So again, if I measure that, so if I measure from there, that's my measurement from the and there. So his bottom of his chest, or sorry, the top of where his chest starts and where his neck goes into his chest is right around here. Okay. I'll give you time to catch up with that. And then his neck comes down from his head almost in a straight line. And then it curves in quite a bit. Not 45 degrees, but it curves in quite a bit before it gets to the chest. So something like that. And it goes in from the throat and curves out. So something like that, a very subtle S shape. Okay. And then you've got just a little bit of, it just comes down a little bit, maybe about half the length of the head. And that's where the chest comes in between his legs there. At least I believe so. Like I said, my tablet is kind of all very shiny with the light that's shining in it. So it's a bit hard to see. So I think I may have miscalculated my measurement here because his legs are certainly not going to be just this long. They're going to go longer. So that's okay. His legs come down the top. So the thigh part of his leg, the upper leg, again, it's another triangle, and they're very, very slim. Deer have very fine legs like horses. And then the lower leg is about that same distance as the upper leg. So yeah, I really miscalculated that, or either that or else I went way bigger than I thought I was going to go. So again, if you find that your measurements like mine were off, don't hesitate to correct that as you're going, because that will often happen. I like to do that little box kind of layout first because I have a very bad tendency to end up drawing off my paper. Usually it's too much to the side, and it's not usually too high or too low, but I have a tendency, I draw too far over to the left and then I can't fit in the rest of his body. And that might happen again today. But so yeah, that's the only reason I do those kind of outer measurements, is just to place them on my page. And sometimes if I end up that I do go too big, I went bigger than I thought I would with his head, and that's why everything else ends up being off. And then his other leg here is, again, it's just another triangle, a very long triangle to the knee. The knee is always going to be a little bit bony where the joint is, and then the lower leg is around the same length. And I'm just putting in very thin lines there, just to kind of indicate where they are. Okay. And his elbow comes up higher on his body, higher than his chest is. So his chest is down here, kind of like that. And his elbow is just a little bit higher there up on his body. And you can see where his elbow is where his underbelly starts, and you can see the difference in the coat pattern there. He's all white from here down. He's all white, well, or tan. So this line of the darker tan on his body, it goes almost straight across. Oops, sorry, hang on, I lost my picture. There we go. Goes almost straight across in a very slight curve, very, very slight curve up, kind of like that. But then his underbelly, which is always make sure that your belly meets up with your chest. Okay. Unless, depending on the angle, sometimes it won't. But generally speaking, you want your belly to meet up with your chest. And that comes up in a much more pronounced kind of a curve. And that's partly due to the foreshortening. We're seeing the foreshortening of his body there. Okay. And then, so I thought his body would end here. So I think I've probably drawn that a little bit too long, but we'll see. We may end up out of proportion here. Then his back leg, the closest leg to us, that thigh, starting at the where that top line meets the bottom line of his belly, that's where that thigh, actually it starts under his belly, but that's where the darker part of his fur starts. So that's what I'm looking at, is that darker, and it comes down again in a triangle, his haunch kind of a thing. And then it actually comes in under his belly. So this is just the fur line here, but his actual haunch, thigh, comes just underneath that belly. Okay, and his hock, if he was standing perpendicular to us, if we were looking at him straight on from the side, his hocks and his knees would be approximately the same height from the ground. So you can use that to gauge approximately where to put his hock. And it's not, if this was a side-on view, his hock would come out quite a bit more like that, but it's not a side-on view. So we don't see most of that hock. We only see it from a front angle. So therefore it's just kind of a little bump like that. And there's also a little bump on the other side. So I just need to look at my reference a little bit better. He's also got a bump further down his leg, which is interesting. I didn't even notice that before. So, interesting. Oopsie. So we can put that in. He's got a little bit of a bump there. But again, make sure it's better to have his legs coming down too fine, too thin, rather than too thick, because you can always, you can always erase and thin them out, but keep in mind, deer are extremely delicate, so you want it to be very fine boned. And then his other back leg is coming down almost, not quite on the same angle, but it doesn't really matter if you put it the same angle, parallel to that other front of the thigh. And that hock will be approximately the same, the same level as the other one. And again, it's not going to be a real, you don't want to make it real pointy. You just want to kind of make it a little rounded. I'm kind of drawing on the side of my pencil. I'm just using an HB here, by the way. And again, he's got that little kind of a, I don't know if that's part of the bone or what that is actually. I'm not sure. And then his leg comes down here. So if you look at the reference, the front of the picture is a little bit cut off, but you can tell he's on an angle because his front hooves here are just very slightly lower than his back hooves. Okay, so, and again, we'll just draw in that very, very thin leg, and even the thighs they're not heavily muscled like a horse. They're just very, very delicate. And this does not look right. There we go, something like that. Okay, am I going at a good speed for you guys, or do I need to slow down, speed up? Let me know if you want me to go faster, slower. Okay, and then for his back end, so his belly comes up here in this rounded kind of an illusion, and then his back end, actually we're pretty much right on as far as the length of him goes, comes up around there. Now I want to continue on the front end before I finish the back to make sure that we line up all properly. So the front, I'm going to come back here. So this is his head, this is his muzzle, his nose, and then he's got a nice little, I'm just looking at I just want to measure the head again and see how far. It's a little more, it's about 2/3 of the way from his tip of his nose to where his eyebrow is, the brow bone. And then that comes back. Something like that. And he does have a jaw. The jaw, just like a horse has that nice big rounded jaw, he also has a jaw. It's just not quite as pronounced as it would be in a horse. And because of the angle, he's got his head tilted very, very slightly away from us. So therefore we're seeing the underside of his jaw. So you won't, that's why the jawbone does not quite come all the way down to this line here is actually the under part of his jaw, which is turned away from us, or towards us rather. Okay, so that's like that. And then just behind that jawbone, where that jawbone comes up, that's where the front of the ear is. So that's what gives us the ear placement. Everything, no matter what you're drawing, you're always making the comparison of where is this compared to where that is, what angle is this compared to what angle that is. So that's how we get the placement of the ear. And his ear might be a little bit too far forward for me. Something like that anyway. And again, remember, it's just a sketch. We're trying to, we're trying to get it as accurate as we can, but it is just a sketch. So if it's off, no big worries. Okay, so that gives us the basic head. And now I just want to, sorry, I have to pick up my tablet and hold it close. With my light shining, I can't tell. Is that his ear sticking out, his other ear behind his neck? I think it is his other ear. And then his neck. Okay, so I'll try and angle my tablet away from the light. So, okay, so the neck, I think his ear has to come in a little bit more, maybe, because his neck is not that big. It's not that wide. Sorry, just place that back where I can see it. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the back of that neck, and it is a little bit more, maybe 3/4 of a head length. So about that long. And then it will go into his, so on animals, on most animals, not all, but most animals, their shoulder blade is here. And it's usually on an angle, something similar to a 45-degree angle. The only reason I know that, I used to breed dogs. So I was very aware of the conformation of a dog, and most animals are similar. And where that shoulder is, the back of the neck is lifted, and that is the highest point of an animal's back, and that's called the withers. And you can see in this picture here, his withers are right about there. So, and that would be because that shoulder blade, he's standing on his leg, his shoulder blade is pushing this area up. And then his back from there goes on a very slight angle back to the back. So the part you want to be careful about here, and so there we end up with a pretty good shape. So the part that might end up being a problem area for you is making his back end, his rump, too slender. So it's probably better to have it a little bit bigger than it would be to have it a little bit too not big enough. So if it is too small, you can, just eyeball it. Forget measuring on your picture. Just eyeball it, and if you feel that it's not big enough, you can pull it out, make it wider. Go in with your eraser and just pull some of those extra lines out if you need to. So that you should end up with something looking like this. Okay, does anybody have any questions or any trouble with any particular areas? Please don't hesitate to ask if you are having a problem, and I'll try and help you out. Okay, then we could, if you want to, you could always leave that as a doe. Oh, and I think we've got to put his ear back here. I can hardly see that ear, but it looks like it's something like that. And then if you don't want to put the antlers in, you don't have to, but if you do want to, I'm just going to get a closer look. Okay, so they actually come up. Oh, I've got his ear way too far forward. Okay, yeah. So his ear on me is way too far forward. So I'm just going to take that out. And his ear will be something like that. And then this is where his antlers are coming here. I thought that was the ear. Again, sorry guys, my tablet is old. My lighting is bad. Excuses. There we go. So actually his ear is something like that. And then his antlers are going to come here. And oopsie. And then he's got them coming up here like that, and just drawing them in very, very lightly for now. And then they come out behind his ear more in another kind of a Y shape. And he's obviously just a young one. So they're not too terribly complicated, just 3 little kind of Y shapes. So something like that. Are you guys still with me? Can somebody type something just so I know somebody's there? I have no idea if you guys are there. I'll give you a minute to catch up. Yes. Okay, good. Okay. So now that you've got that, we're going to put his eye in. So his eye. So deer, horses, cows, they're all members of, if not exactly the same family, they're all members of very similar family. They've all got very large eyes. And they're almond shaped more or less. Not so I usually do always start with the round shape, and I want to make sure I do get his side big enough, so I may go bigger than I need to. You're behind on the antlers, Sue. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to just slow down a little bit then. It's really difficult for me without seeing what you're doing to know where you are. So please don't hesitate to tell me, and I can slow down just a tad. I'll just get rid of some of my extra lines here. Tidy things up. Okay. So yeah, I try to go a little bit larger with my eye because it's always easier to put the shading in and make it appear smaller than it is to make it go larger when you've started out too small. You want to make sure that you're getting in the correct angle. So I'm just looking at my reference. And he's got this line coming down pretty much exactly on a 45-degree angle in the front of his eye. We're not going to get too detailed here. Again, it's a sketch, so, but you do want to try and get the shape right. And then underneath his eye, a shadow, because his eye, the eye socket, the bone underneath his eye is throwing shade because there's a hollow underneath his eye, right? So you can just very lightly kind of put in some shading there just to indicate that. And then if you want to put in, always leave a highlight. Try and leave it in around the same spot that you see it in your reference photo, and always leave it a little bigger than you think you're going to need, because it always ends up smaller than you think it's going to be. But that the highlight in the eye is really what helps to give any animal, any human, anybody, really helps to give them their expression. And then you want to make sure that you do get the rest of the eye nice and dark. So if you have a darker pencil that you can change to, you can, or else just press a little bit harder with your HB. Okay, and then I'm going down to the front of his face, and I want to give him just a little bit of a chin. So I'm just going to pull that down just a little bit. Just give him a little bit of a rounder, softer edge down here. And I want to make sure that this is coming. His cheekbone is maybe a little bit too far forward, too far up. And then his mouth, his lips. And just again, when I go silent, it's because I'm really looking at my reference. So his entire muzzle comes on a bit of an angle there. So if you've got yours too straight, you can just angle it a little bit more. And then his lip, his mouth is coming down. He's got a... So when you put his mouth in, you're measuring kind of from the... Well, let's put his nose in. That might make things easier. And again, I have to look a little closer. The picture is very dark for me, so I'm not sure if you guys are seeing more detail than I am, because everything is kind of washed out in my brilliant lights I've got shining here. But basically his nose is going to be there. And then his mouth from there, this upper lip is really not very long before his mouth starts. And that's how you can kind of judge, is how far down from the bottom of his nose does his mouth come. And it kind of goes a little bit down, and then it curls very, very slightly up. So something like that. And he's got, then make sure that you've got the chin. That nose is very bad. My nose is very bad. But I'm having a hard time seeing. Yeah, and his eye probably should have come up a little bit, but that's okay. So something like that. Okay. And then you want to make sure that your neck is not coming out at the wrong spot. So make sure that you've got a nice, elegant neck. At this point now, we're just going to go over all of our outline and basically refine it. Okay, and we can put some shading in as we go along. So he's got a very much of an S curve here coming out. And that's what really helps to give that beautiful movement. He's really, you can tell he's really stretching, and his neck comes down into here, and the other shoulder is on the other side, something like that. And the neck comes right down into the chest here. Then we can give a little bit more form here to the leg, because it's not just a triangle. It's got a nice big muscle on the thigh. So you do want to give it a little bit more of a muscular appearance. And again, remember at that knee joint, you're always going to have a little bit of a bony protrusion there. And then it comes down very fine. And there's not a lot of detail there. And I can't see if there's actually, oh yes, is there a hoof there? Yeah, it is. So they're cloven hoofed. So they've got a split up the middle of their hoof. So just something like that. And, oh, sorry, I'm off the page a little bit. Tell me if I am, if you can't see. And then the same on the other leg. You can see where the leg is more muscular, and it comes down here. And that will actually bring these two legs closer together where they hadn't been before. A little bit more of a obvious, because his leg is closer and it's positioned a little bit differently. So more head on, so you've got more of a rounding and the muscle there. I mean, they're not terribly muscled, but there's a little bit more muscle than what we had originally. And again, there's not a lot of muscle in the lower. It's all tendons and very, very fine bone down there. So again, this one, I think the hoof is right off the For me, anyway, it's right off the page, so I imagine it's going to be pretty much the same as the other one. Something like that. Okay, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Okay. And the belly, you just want to, you might want to make sure, refine that line exactly where the belly is, and you can go in with your eraser if you need to and erase anything that shouldn't be there. I'm trying to go a little bit slower in case anybody needs some time to catch up. And then, so right under the belly, right under here, I'm going very, very, very lightly with the side of my HB pencil, just to give a very subtle indication there of some shading. And then higher up, starting right behind the elbow, which maybe my elbow is just a little bit too high. That's where the actual body color starts. So I'll just put in a little bit of subtle shading there. And then his back leg, I'll just make that just a little tiny bit more muscular. And from where that line is, that's where the coloring is. And that comes down. That comes down into, I'm going to have to look up what that bone is. I never noticed that before, actually. And then the back hoof is extremely difficult to see. Something like that. And okay, so just, I'll point this out. Huge mistake here. Huge mistake is that I brought this hind leg down past where his front feet are. They are going to be further back, so therefore they're going to be on a different plane. So that's just because I was trying to get that hoof in, and in order to get it in, I made his leg longer to accommodate it. No, I have to make the leg shorter to accommodate it. So that's like a, if you're just not thinking and you're going too fast, very easy mistake to make. But so that's why you always want to be comparing your perspective, because if this is the ground here, then there's no way his hoof would be even further forward. So I've got to judge about, and it's hard because his feet actually are cut off, at least in my picture they are. So really hard to judge exactly where that hoof should be, but it's going to be back here somewhere. At least not further forward than that. And I can't see the hoof very well in here, but it's going to be something like that. And then the back leg, this back leg here. So this part is going to be, it's not really terribly muscular. The muscle is on the outside of the thigh. This is more like almost, well, it's not a tendon, but it's not a muscle, not a huge muscle anyway. And then his other hoof is more like that. And they're pointed. So something like that. And then this thigh is just a little bit more muscular. Okay. And then his back haunches, they would be quite muscular. because they do a lot of running and jumping. So they've obviously got the muscle to be able to do that. And then his back. Okay. And then I'm not going to pay a lot of attention here to the antlers. We're kind of running out of time. Not running out of time, but it's been 45 minutes, so I don't want to go too long. But I'm just going to basically just very roughly give them some shape here so that we can see them. So don't worry if you're not getting the shape exact. And then you can put the spots in or not. But if you want to, I would just do little spots like that. And they do go very much along the body. They follow pretty much in a line. So you can just kind of, or you can leave them out. He's kind of right on the verge of losing his spots there with those antlers. If anybody is interested in deer, I follow a woman on Instagram, Fuzzy Fawn Wildlife. She rescues deer in New York State. Anyway, she posts a lot of information about deer. It's very interesting. Okay, so basically that's giving you a little bit of an idea there, and then you can just very lightly, if you want to, put in some ground so he's not just standing in the middle of the air. Just very roughly. And then probably, okay, let's give him his coloring up here. The back of his neck would be darker. And as soon as you get the shading in, whether it's his coloring or whether it's excuse me, whether it's his coloring or the actual shadow and light where it's falling, doesn't really matter. It just automatically, it starts to then give you some dimension. I probably would not, like looking at this guy, he's in the sun and the shade, and I probably wouldn't indicate that sun. I don't like the shape of this back here. I probably would not indicate like he's got a big patch of sunlight here and the rest of him is in shadow. I wouldn't bother to put that in because it's out of context in this particular sketch. We're not drawing, all the sun and the shading and stuff. So you'd be looking at it and thinking, well, why is that big light patch there? It just wouldn't make a lot of sense, kind of thing. So you have to kind of judge that. So I'm just using the side of my pencil to just very, very lightly, picking out where I see his various, the shading caused by his actual musculature and that kind of thing. And then if you want to, if you have a little brush or something you can do some soft shading with, sorry, I would probably go back in with my it's just a little soft synthetic brush and very, very lightly go over where I've shaded. And that actually was not in there, but I won't take it out. And I would just add a little bit of shadow around where I see the darkest. And he's always going to have, oops, I'm losing my picture. Well, his legs are completely in shadow, but he's always going to have the shadow around his knees, his hocks. And then you can leave his belly a little bit lighter by not shading down there. So just something like that. And then in his face, back of his face is more in shade, and around here and right around the nose. So then what I might do just to finish it off and kind of put everything in context is I would probably come up here and just put in some scribbles just above his head to just vaguely and roughly indicate that there's some leaves, and that's what he's reaching for, some leaves up on it. And this is just literally scribbles back and forth, more or less the side of the pencil. You can come down closer to him if you want. And if you want, you can put a branch in through there, kind of thing, something like that. If you have more room than I have, I don't have enough room to put it in realistically, but you could put a tree trunk in there, you know. So just something like that to kind of give it a little bit of context is all. Okay. Can't see my scribbles. Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. There you go. They're just literally scribbles like this, back and forth, little scribbles. Okay. Sorry, I wanted to be zoomed in enough with this camera that you would see the detail, but it's obvious. I'll have to lift my camera a little bit higher next time. And I promise, as soon as I can, I'll try and get a proper camera. So that's basically what you want to end up with. Let me see if I can just actually lift this up. There we go. It's clamped to a light, and I'm afraid the whole thing will fall right over. There we go. A little bit better. So that's just basically our sketch for today. It was a little bit more of a if you take your time, I don't think it was a difficult one, but it was a really good one, I think, to really get the feel of looking for the shapes in animals. And you might want to go back over it afterwards, after the fact, and refine some of it. But again, it's a sketch, so I'm happy with that. And so this was a reference off of Unsplash. So usually when I'm done my sketches, I just initial them, I'll date them. I often put how long it took me. So this took us about 50 minutes, and well, probably about 45 minutes by the time we got started. And it's a nice record of your sketches. So if anybody wants to email me your sketches or show them on social media or message me somehow with them, I'd love to see what you did. And so I would also love if you want to email or message me to know your opinion of what you think about doing it here on YouTube versus Instagram. I had the last time that I did my Sketchy Saturday on Instagram, I for those of you that were there, I got disconnected. And when I ended up coming back, it somehow has made some kind of a glitch in my Instagram, so that I can't pause videos. Like when I'm watching, whether it's my own, somebody else's, I don't see that time bar. So I think I'm going to have to I've messaged Instagram, which is a losing battle. I'm sure I'll never hear from them. But anyway, I'm going to try installing Instagram again and see if that fixes the problem. But if not, it makes it a major issue for me with doing videos. I can still do reels, but videos are maybe a problem. Anyway, I do want to try and get doing it here as much as I can, so that it will be open to a lot more people. And I think it's a better platform if I can just figure out my lighting and get a proper camera. I think it will be better. So I do hope you enjoyed this, and it'll be 2 weeks again back here, barring any unforeseen problems. Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining me and for tolerating this little bit of a lighting problem and getting used to doing it. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Oh, you do enjoy it more. Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, bye, guys.